Set YouTube up. Episode 23. Live on YouTube. Yes. And live on YouTube, and then just share it. YT. View on LinkedIn. A message sent to 23rd episode. 23rd. Good done. 8-4, right? I'm a bit late, sorry about that. But I am here, which is good news. So yeah, I'm live. That should be good, right? Here always. Hi, I can hear you. Thank you so much, Mr. Kulkarni. We will begin. Hear you. You hear me, and you are also here with me. Have you watched Succession? There's a joke on Succession about we hear you. Good joke. It was a good joke. I'm just looking at somebody from YouTube to tell me that everything is okay. And as soon as we're ready, I'll give you the show that you deserve. Show that you deserve. You deserve it. You deserve it. Bum bum bum. Bum 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 bum. Bum 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 bum. Bum bum bum. Bum 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 bum. Just waiting for somebody to tell me on YouTube. If you can hear me on YouTube, say something. Whenever I say something, I'm reminded of Pulp Fiction. If you're alright, say something. Something. YouTube, if you can hear me, say yes, and we'll begin the show that you deserve. The show that you deserve. Just worried about my hair all the time. Yeah. But anyway, YouTube, can you hear me? Folks on YouTube, just say yes. Get the comments rolling. Come on in. Come on in. We've got a show to put up. Something really interesting brewing in this world, as always. So it's 8-7 already. Oh my god, I'm getting late. Got to start at 9. So let's wait for 10 more seconds, and then I'll have to begin without say so. Yeah, 2 people online YouTube. Just say something if you can hear me. Just check. I don't want to go and like, oh, I couldn't hear you, there was a double noise and stuff like that. If you can hear me, say yes. Say yes. Say yes. Say yes. I can hear you. All right. All right. Ah, okay. I'm audible on YouTube as well. Good. And so we'll begin. Bum 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 bum. Hello everybody. Welcome to Thinker's Frequency. We are having such a good time. This is the peak of human civilization. We are working so hard, doing such good work for ourselves, our parents, our kids, our siblings, our husbands, our wife, everybody. Well, not other people's husbands and wives, I hope. And just when we thought things couldn't get any better, like they couldn't possibly get any better, well, they just did. Things got a whole lot better, gentlemen and ladies. Call it divine intervention, but now we have Thinker's Frequency, our daily dose of insights and analysis which don't lead to paralysis right before we start our day. So let's continue with our journey of reading between the lines things that are especially important and interesting in the world of business and finance. Let's go! Oh, and before we go, we're gonna follow a tradition, right? The tradition of the simultaneous sip. Oh, Mr. Raju Kumar says, I can't hear you on YouTube. Mr. Kumar, could you please check? Because it's audible, it should be audible, you know? If you could just check if the problem is at your end, it'll be great. Anyway, so we were following a tradition. It's fine now. Great. The tradition of the simultaneous sip, right? You know the tradition of the simultaneous sip, the beautiful simultaneous sip. We're all gonna sip something together. And all you need for the simultaneous sip is a cup, a mug, a glass, a tank, a chalice or stein, a canteen jug or flask, or a vessel of any kind. Pour it with your favorite liquid. Today I'm having mango shake. And here we go! Oh my god. Oh my god. Let's do it again. So good. Extraordinary. Highlight of the day, dopamine hit of dopamine hits. Such a beautiful, beautiful thing to say. You know what the simultaneous sip says, right? You know what the simultaneous sip says? It says that you are not alone. We're in this together. And that's such a beautiful thing to say. So let's begin. Israel has bombed Iranian broadcaster. Tehran presses Trump for ceasefire. Seems like Iran is trying to come for a ceasefire. It's a very viral video on the internet where a state broadcaster, is talking about how Iran will defend itself and how Iran will destroy Israel and so on and so forth. And suddenly a drone bombs at her building and the whole TV set gets demolished. It's pretty hilarious. It's just next level. But now Iran, is pressing for ceasefire and it's talking about a possibility of ceasefire. But you know what? With the ceasefire comes riders, and it says it's not gonna go for nuclear disarmament, which means, where is the ceasefire? Because that's the thorn up everybody's butt, right? Israel doesn't want nuclear weapons for Iran. Iran wouldn't give away the nuclear weapons. So what about the ceasefire? Where's the substance in that ceasefire? And that's a very, very potent question which nobody has answers to. That where is this going? Because it's getting complicated trade-wise. So there's something called Strait of Baruz. What is that strait? So there's a strait. It's called Strait of Hormuz. Okay. So Iran has a little strait of sea, and then comes Oman. Okay. And on that Strait of Hormuz, happens a lot of trade, right? So a lot of ships go through that strait, and it's coming to a pitch where that strait could go black. I mean, it could be blocked. If that strait could be blocked by Tehran or Iran as a negotiating power or anything, it could lead havoc to the global trade. It could lead unbelievable ramifications for the global trade. You know why? Because if the ship goes down, and strait is a very narrow passage, right? And if it blocks them, no ships will be able to pass, and a lot of global trade, global shipments go through that. So if you remember, a few years ago, Suez Canal, the European link, it had gotten blocked for a few days. Does anybody remember that story? So a few years ago, Suez Canal had gotten blocked. And you know why it got blocked? Because a huge ship, it basically couldn't turn. So it got blocked in the way of the... So this is the strait, this is one land, this is another land. A ship is supposed to go here, but it got like this. And it couldn't turn. And when it couldn't turn, the entire global supply chain got into a jiffy. Because a lot of trade happens through that. Even for India, if you look at, The Strait of Hormuz is important because 20 mbpd, which is a unit for uh, transits, essentially 70% of it goes to Asia, right? 30% of oil trade of the world, 30% of oil trade, and 40% of India's supply of crude comes through this Strait of Hormuz. 40% of supply, right? All energy exports about 20% of global energy trade. So, and there's no other way. So 40% of India's crude and 54% of India's LNG supply, natural gas supply, liquefied natural gas, is dependent on this Strait of Hormuz. And if it goes down, you will see that the crude will get a serious shock. So if you remember, a lot of our inflation was down because of the crude price going down, right? And if this happens, crude is going to go up, which is going to lead to a lot of problems, cascading effects of which are hard to imagine. But the point is, it's not going to be a good story for the FMCG companies, sure. So they might have rough days ahead as far as the stock is considered. Because paint industry, FMCG industry, they're very dependent on crude, right? And for import and everything. So you might just see something like the stocks, as far as the consumable goods are considered, might just be seeing a sad day or beginning of sad days. Or let's see, at least temporarily. US warship is heading towards Mid East as tension rise. Everything is going to a head. This is not de-escalating. And so recently, Russia and US had a talk. And in that talk, in that 1 hour conversation, they discussed that it's important for peace to happen and it's important for war to happen, war to stop. So US told Russia that it's important for war to stop. Russia told US that it's important for war to stop. And that's it. That was the conversation. I think they just wasted an hour, right? Of course, it's important for war to stop. But what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it, right? That's the real question. Anyway, so it's not getting solved anytime soon, it seems. Israel has said that it will take 2 weeks for Iran, for its operation in Iran. But nobody in this world believes that it's going to take 2 weeks. That's a fact. It doesn't take 2 weeks. Trump organization has launched a T-Mobile service. So they're launching a phone service with some branded smartphones and so on and so forth. So it's not actually Trump organization who's making any of this or stuff like that. They say that these phones are going to be made in America and whatnot. But it's just a licensing deal. So Trump business has such brand equity that if you notice, there's Trump Tower and there's a lot of Trump businesses, right? Even in India, real estate is selling with Trump Tower as the brand. But the team Trump has nothing to do with that except for brand licensing and SOPs. So it's a good business model if you have such a good brand that you can actually license it, not as a realtor because you were essentially a real estate player, but also as like a telecom mobile branding company, which is very interesting. TI Mobile is the player which is using this. In savings, FDs continue losing ground to riskier stocks and mutual funds. Viewers of Thinker's Frequency would know that why FDs and savings accounts are losing heat, right? And what's the process going on? You might remember everything. But for people who are new, I'll say that people in India have stopped essentially using savings accounts and FDs to store money because they've seen a lot of growth happening at mutual funds, SIPs, and these stocks, direct stocks investments. So because money grows faster there, 11% in the index, and some stocks might just go way beyond that, the Indian populace is generally seeing a decline of savings accounts, FDs. and that's continuing. So just a graph says that share of households including HUFs bank term deposits used to be 50.54 million percent, and now it's 45 million. In 2021 it was 50 million, 50%, and in FY25 it was 45%. And now it's gonna further decline because interest rates have gone down. If interest rates have gone down, uh, savings rates will also come down because the banks have to maintain some sort of net interest margin, right? So to make money, if interest rates are coming down, savings rates are also going to come down. And if savings rate come down, you are going to see even further reduction in the use of FDs in general. Even though individuals are not really cutting their FDs, it's more or less family accounts. However, just think about it. What happens if the savings rates go down and people don't save? People are not incentivized to keep money in the bank. What are the ramifications of it? Can you think about it? Just think about it for a second. I'll give you a second. What happens if the savings rate go down and banks are not, people are not incentivized to keep money in the banks? What happens is that there's a possibility of increase in spending, right? There's a possibility of increased consumer spending if they are not, emergency funds are absent, says Mr. Perspective. Well, no. Mutual funds are liquid investments. You can withdraw anytime. So are stocks. They are not illiquid. They're not going to real estate so that money can be blocked. You can redeem your funds anytime. No, that's not. What could happen, urgent loans demand go up. Well, urgent loans demand, okay, because banks are not saving money, people are not saving money in the bank. No, but that money is going to investments, right? So they can always redeem those investments and cash it out because these are liquid investments. The another possibility is that spending goes up because people keep very little amount in savings accounts, and that is usually the amount to spend. So FDs go down, a lot of FDs get shifted to mutual funds, they get higher returns, and then people start spending more. That's the hope. Why it's a real possibility is because Japan, this is what Japan looked up to. So Japan, people were just saving money and they were not spending, right? So they kept reducing the deposit rates, so much so that their deposit rates became negative. And why was it so? Just to incentivize people to spend. Miss Yamini Kaushik says cost of borrowing will shoot up. No, ma'am. No. Cost of borrowing has come down. That's what interest rates do. So I'll give you the flow of things. RBI sets the interest rates at which banks are gonna get money. That's the interest which banks will pay to get money. Okay. Now banks have an interest rate at which people will get money from banks. It's usually a little higher, right? RBI sets the interest rates, banks get money at that interest rate, bank give loans to people at a higher interest rates and earn, right? So cost of, when the interest rate goes down, the cost of borrowing goes down automatically. Okay, that's what interest rates do. They bring down the cost of borrowing automatically. However, when the cost of borrowing comes down, when the loans become cheaper, the banks also have to make a net interest margin. Bank's business model is we lend at X percentage and we make people deposit money at Y percentage, and Y has to be less than X. That's why we'll make money. So let's say if my FD deposit rate is 5.5%, 6%, I'll have to lend at 10% so that I can earn the spread, right? Now, the conundrum which people are facing is that interest rates have come down. And with interest rates, savings rates are also going to come down because that's the net interest margin play, right? And when savings rates come down, even down. People are not interested in depositing their money in FDs anymore. You get the point? You get the drift? That's the problem which Indian banks have been facing for a very long time. You know, this is a 3-4 year old problem where these people were really concerned that we don't have deposits, so we don't have capital adequacy, there is no liquidity in the system, and so on and so forth, which was solved by RBI with some complicated processes. But now the problem is that there's a lot of liquidity in the system, but still people are not using bank FDs or savings account as much, and it's reducing. So I hope that was an interesting refresher. If it is, drop comments so that other people can also be following the discussion who are just joining, right? So India wants US assurance that there's going to be no more tariff post the bilateral trade agreement, because tariff is a tricky situation, especially with Team Trump, who is using it in a very improvisational fashion. So India says that we need an assurance that once this bilateral trade agreement, according to which some 26% of tariff will come on India, there'll be no more tariff. US President on April 2 announced a reciprocal tariff of 26% on goods imports from India as a part of its trade levies. These tariffs were paused, and now something is gonna happen. So that is interesting. Interestingly, Team Trump is also pushing for Russia's inclusion back in the G7. So they want, Team Trump says that Russia should never have been given the kick from G7, because that's what led to the war. It got it got alienated and ostracized from the global community, and which was a big strategic blunder. Is he right about it? I think so. Definitely. Absolutely. So Russia has been getting alienated a lot, and these NATO moves have really hurt the country, due to which it has taken some serious retaliatory measures. So let's see what happens there. Companies want to play it safe, geopolitical storm. Okay, streaming now, all the action behind a minute of drama. So micro dramas are a new thing. How many of you know about micro dramas? So micro dramas is a new category of content creation. Yesterday we talked a lot about falling film industry, right? The reduction in the cinema attendance and cinemas going down and so on. So I've even written about it because I'm a huge movie buff. But what's seeing an interesting offshoot is these 1 or 2 minute shows or 3 minute shows. These are on vertical, and these shows are coming on Facebook and on all of these platforms. These shows are made in like Pakistan or even India. These are like 3-4 minute dramas, micro dramas they're called, and those micro dramas are actually taking a lot of headspace of people. Very interestingly. So a lot of companies like ShareChat and a lot of streaming companies in general are going towards this micro drama play. In fact, VCs are also paying money for this micro drama play because they think it has there's some substance behind that action. But is there a substance behind an action? Do you think a 3-minute micro drama, even if it runs at 100 episodes and even if it's being able to engage people, would it be able to make money? I don't think so. So a lot of this kind of news is basically driven by platforms who are trying to spin a positive narrative around their company. So ShareChat is one of those companies. ShareChat is the definition of VC bubble. ShareChat is, if you wanted to point out that, hey man, I just want a definitive VC bubble example which can tell me what a bad company looks like, it'll be ShareChat. So if you look at ShareChat's history, it began as a social networking platform, but what it essentially did was provide a bank of WhatsApp forwards to people. So a lot of those good morning, good evening, good night, happy Dashera kind of messages, the pictures and so on, those people found, people use ShareChat to find those. Okay. So it wasn't really a social networking platform, it was basically a seeding platform for WhatsApp forwards and WhatsApp status messages. However, they got a lot of money. Like they got a lot of money. Like they just started acquiring capital or raising capital, like it was unbelievable. With this capital, they also launched their own, and they acquired companies which did a lot of short video like TikTok. Okay, so they ended up acquiring almost $2 billion, raising almost $2 billion, right? Now 1.8 or something, if I'm not wrong. I'm not wrong, so you can check. So then what happened was TikTok came to India. This was before the Galwan clash of 2020, right? And TikTok came in India, and suddenly ShareChat and its companies, they started seeing dwindling engagement, right? And their engagement was just going down and down and down, and they could have been like fire sold to TikTok anytime. But then what happened was, then China attacked India. When China attacked India, TikTok was banned. And when TikTok was banned, ShareChat essentially had its competitor eliminated due to freak occurrence, like, blind luck, right? And then it raised even more capital. So at its peak, ShareChat was valued at $5 billion. $5 billion. When it actually made a loss of 4,000 crore rupees, $500 million almost, at a revenue of around 100 million, 80 million, not even 100 million. So here's a company which was making like $80 million in revenues and $400 million in losses, roughly. And it was valued at $5 billion. When Facebook India itself was getting valued at $6 billion, while doing $2 billion in revenue profitably. So here's Facebook India, 16,000 crores in revenues, profits. Here's ShareChat, $80 million revenue, 4,000 crores in losses, and it's getting valued at 5 billion, while Facebook India is getting valued at 6 billion, right? So this company has never raised money. It has always bled money like no one can bleed money, frankly, but somehow kept getting, kept raising money and raising money. And now it's cutting losses. Okay. And you know how it's cutting losses? How it's been able to cut losses? It's been able to cut losses by this streaming business. Those cheap streaming shows where ladies are essentially, that kind of stuff. So that's where most of its revenue is coming from. Now, 50% of its revenues are streaming operations. Not the content, not anything, streaming. And they're being positioning themselves as profitable because even they want to go IPO now, right? Even though they don't make money, I've written a lot about ShareChat. They've never made money. They had barely left with any cash right now. They had also raised debt. That debt would have been very hard to service. They're not making money, but they're trying to do a PR push around, their company, and this streaming micro drama is another PR push by ShareChat, if you can see, because a lot of these dramas are hosted on ShareChat. So they're hoping that something good happens, with their sentiment gets improved, and they could spin a narrative where they could go IPO. It's one of the most interesting startup stories of India, at least in the last 10 years. It's just unbelievable. Like a war killing your competition, you raising money, always losing money, then your founders going out, having cashed out. So the founders made a lot of money by secondary sales, and they just stopped working. They went ahead and started another business, right? And this bleeding company is left with one founder who is now into the streaming play and doing all sorts of dirty stuff. But anyway, good for them. Good for them, right? Good for them. How is that story, by the way? Can you even believe it? It's just unbelievable, right? Very difficult to imagine. So, Mr. Modi ji, is in Cyprus. Cyprus is a country neighboring Turkey. Turkey is somebody who supported Pakistan during the war, and Turkey is also a country which has actually taken a lot of Cyprus land. So, is it a strategic play? Of course it is. Of course it is, right? So, China has world's fastest growing nuclear arsenal. So at the moment, Russia and US have like some 5,000. Russia has the biggest nuclear stockpile of the world, 5,400 inventory, and US has 5,200 roughly. India is at 180 and China is at 600, and they're growing 100 each year. 100 each year. India is barely growing 8 every year, right? So China is extremely focused towards defense as an industry. Maybe it's learning from US, maybe it's seeking a new growth frontier with defense. Its defense budget is $250 billion, conservatively estimated. So this should be another nudge for India to go real ballistic with its defense play, right? So maybe that Cyprus meet is in that direction. Maybe we are looking at exporting something of that sort, right? A lot of Kashmiri students have been studying in Iran, and that's a trouble because they have been stuck. They're stuck now, which could be a problem. Why did they go to Iran? Because it's cheaper than Bangladesh. Medical costs like 40-50 lakh in Bangladesh, but it costs 14 to 15 lakhs in Iran. So that's why they were there. EU's green trade rules are kicking in, and India's working policy shifts. So India and Europe have been trying to figure out ways to actually set up the trade agreement, and a big hurdle to that was the green rules. Essentially, you know, EU is enforcing a lot of green aspects, and one of them are very actually interesting. They say single-use plastic shouldn't be there for shipments of fruits and stuff, and then antibiotic-free livestock should be there. So what happens is, in India, whatever milk we get and whatever like chicken people eat, a lot of they're stuffed with antibiotics, right? And if you stuff animals with antibiotic, you become antibiotic resistant, because when you're drinking or milk, or when you're eating non-vegetarian food, and that is jammed with antibiotics, when you actually need those antibiotics, it won't be as effective because you're already on a consistent dose of antibiotics. EU wants it out. If EU wants it out, it could be a very good news for India if some of that comes here, right? If some antibiotic you know stuff happens. And then of course single-use plastics and waste management is one of their issues. So that's interesting. Viewers of Thinkers Frequency would remember how car sales are declining, or not picking up as much. We've discussed this in depth. Which city do you think has the most number of cars? Which city do you think has the most number of cars? Just take a wild guess. Viewers of Thinkers Frequency would obviously know, regular viewers, which cities, at which spot, but which city has the maximum number of cars? Okay, all right. So the answer is Bangalore now. Bangalore has more cars per people than even Delhi. Delhi has some 40 lakh cars. Bangalore has even more, right? And but the problem is, and India sends like 4 lakh, no, 3.5 lakh cars just last quarter. So India sells a lot of cars, right? Now, since the base is so large, what India is actually looking at is some decline in the car demand. Maybe it's a seasonal thing, maybe it's not. But car sales are struggling. Passenger vehicle sales fell 0.8%, but utility vehicles saw a strong demand. So two wheelers grew, passenger vehicles fell, auto rickshaws fell, scooter sales went up, and so on. But even in scooter sales, do you know which company actually led the way? When you talk about electric vehicles and so on and so forth, it's TVS. So TVS is leading the way, not Ola, not Ather. TVS is now at the first spot, Bajaj is at the second spot, Ola is at the third spot, but Ola shipments have declined. So Ather is picking up, Ola is declining. Bad news for Ola stock, of course. So, yet auto companies are looking at a double day pay hike because a lot of revolutions are happening, EV and technology and everything. The world now raises a toast for Indian whiskey. Over half of top 20 brands come from India. So viewers of Thinkers Frequency would remember a very nice discussion that we had on alcohol consumption, right? Alcohol consumption is declining over the world, and even in India, alcohol consumption is declining. And we discussed the reasons why alcohol consumption is declining, a lot of the reasons which were projected by these companies, and then we thought about what could be the actual reasons. And that was an interesting discussion, which we do not want to have again because we've done it. New viewers of Thinkers Frequency might just ask me if you want, and I'll talk about it. However, the only green shoot market right now in the whole alcohol space, the big one, is India. Whatever is left of it, it's slowly declining, but it's still there, right? And a lot of Indian whiskey is actually seeing a lot of uptick. And a lot of it is premiumization, because what happens is 60% of it is non-premium market. Okay, the Indian whiskey market, the Indian alcohol market, 60% of it is non-premium. With the rising economy and the per capita income and everything, what these companies are looking at is maybe that this market will get premiumized. And if it gets premiumized, even in a falling market, we can grow. So that's that. World now raises a toast. Over half of top 20 brands in the world of whiskey come from India, which shouldn't be a surprise. We are the most populous nation in the world. We have a few brands. A lot of people drink alcohol even now. So where's the surprise? The surprise is these are the gasps of a dying industry, or a declining industry, if not dying. So that's the surprise. Speaking of surprises, US Pharma is betting on China to snap up potential big value drugs. So a lot of US pharma companies, patents are expiring. They're coming to a 20-year expiration date, and they are now looking at China for new drugs to license. So you can license drugs and then sell them, right? And apparently China is doing a miraculously good job as far as this new drug development is considered. And with that, kudos to China. Unfortunately, the bad news which people don't know is that 90% of APIs in India and even in US come from China. APIs are called active pharmaceutical ingredients. So if so much of active pharmaceutical ingredients are coming from China, you can expect that something really wrong is happening, because then you have a similar dependence on China for your medicines as you have for rare earth magnets, right? So rare earth magnets, when you lost them, what did you lose? You lost some supply of cars, right? Or disrupted cars. What if they block the supply of APIs in tomorrow? If tomorrow we see a major conflict of some kind, and API supply goes, the entire country goes to the bed and dies, right? So that's interesting. However, right now we are not that pitch, right? At the moment, the total cost of licensing agreements, including low upfront payments and subsequent large payouts, average 84 billion in the US compared to 31 billion in China. That's China is cost efficient. Licensing agreement. China's share of global development is now at 30%, while US has slipped 1% to 48%. So China's global drug development is essentially at 30%. China is kicking it as far as drug development is considered. India has no innovation in that market. So, not really anything that we can talk about. That's what do you think about that? How does that make you feel? Well, for once, it doesn't make me feel surprised, you know. But yeah, not good, not good. Dalal Street, that is the Indian stock market, rebounds on hopes conflict in West Asia may soon wind down. What we are hoping for is that conflicts in West Asia may soon wind down. They say that they might not block the Strait of Hormuz and everything will be back to normal. Or let's hope that it goes back to normal. But who's to say? Who knows? Who knows, right? Who knows? At the moment, it's a speculation game. But thank God, Iran doesn't have nuclear weapons. Because if it did have nuclear weapons, at this conflict, you would have seen some nuclear action. And that would have actually meant everything going down. With this, we've discussed, viewers of Thinkers Frequency would know, gold is doing well, right? Whenever there's a conflict in the world, what goes up? Gold goes up. Gold goes up. Iran oil prices fall on reports Iran seeks truce. So basically the stock market is essentially looking at Iran seeking truce. It calling Trump for a ceasefire and so on and so forth. But just think about it. So Iran and Israel have a conflict. Israel says that we are gonna stop at nothing but nuclear disarmament and also regime change. None of those things happen. Iran attacks Israel, gains some respectability in the home crowd, and then there's a truce, there's a ceasefire. Is that a good news or a bad news? Because Iran would be where it was, right? It would be still very close to a nuclear weapon. It's basically just delaying the conflict, right? You haven't solved the conflict. And if you haven't solved the conflict, is it really stable? No, not really. Not really. That's something to wonder. Jobless rate rises to 5.6% in May, but a lot of it is attributed to the agricultural, employment, and a lot of it is temperature based also, weather based also, because there's a lot of heat. So active participation, the labor force participation rate, right? It is LFPR. That has gone down because people are not actively looking at jobs. So labor force participation rate measures people actively looking for work, and that has come down. And the jobless rate is looking at 5.6 in urban areas at 6.9. But inflation is down. Wholesale inflation hits 14-month low. Prices ease. Inflation is down. RBI was very correct at cutting interest rates because inflation is down. Now you can look at growth. But inflation could be up in some time if the war doesn't settle and if oil prices rise, right? Because everything depends on the crude import that we do. Speaking of crude imports, Game On. Phone makers are tapping esports, mobile gaming to woo young Indians. So if you've been following the smartphone industry, you'll realize that smartphone industry is not really growing in India. The shipments of smartphones are declining, and there's a real problem with premiumization as far as smartphones are considered, due to which people are a little upset in the smartphone industry, and they're saying, what do we do, right? And because of this, or not because of this, but in relation, not cause and effect, but correlation, gaming companies, phone companies are actually looking at gaming events as an avenue to lure young people, and they're making phones specific to gaming so that it picks up. And this is a very good news for telecom industry as well, because they're saying that if gaming happens a lot, some telecom action will also happen. More data will be used, which could be sold as a data gaming package something. So a lot of this is basically a shot in the arm for two not so green industries right now. Smartphone shipments fell 5.5% on year in March quarter, making a slow start. Right? Smartphone brands and telecom are also sponsoring major shows. So smartphone industry in general is struggling because people are not really upgrading their phones. They thought that once they've bought a phone, they're gonna upgrade it and so on and so forth, but that is not shaping up at the moment. Even though it's huge, Samsung made like 80,000 crores in revenue, and the just from smartphones. So did Apple, and then there's Apple made like 50,000 crores, and then there's this whole Realme and Oppo, Vivo unit, the BYM, right? They also made 80,000 crores. So it's a huge market, but it's not growing anymore and may decline. So that's that. How Meta scale AI investment would give it ammo in a arms race, AI arms race. We discussed it yesterday. Whenever a company which is supposed to be a leader in an industry is lagging behind, what it comes out with is with a lot of announcements. So if you look at Meta's AI is not really competing in a meaningful way with, let's say, ChatGPT and whoever else, if you can name, like even Google Gemini is ahead, ChatGPT, DeepSeek, everything. Meta is far behind, and it should not be far behind. So it doesn't have real products to speak of. Like Llama, it claims 1 billion people use it, but not really. So what it's doing is a lot of PR paintbrush kind of stuff. It has invested a lot of money, about 15 billion in AI, in scale AI, and it's also talking about research labs and setting up labs and positioning itself as a pioneer in AI when it's not, and it's a usual practice amongst companies. If you look at AI, Apple stock is down because of AI, lack of AI readiness. Essentially, Apple stock. Apple stock. What's happening with Apple stock? 1% up today, but 5% down for last month. 6 months, 20% down. Year to date, 20% down. 1 year, 8% down. So Apple stock is down, and it doesn't have a lot of intelligence projects to speak about. Even though it came up with Apple Intelligence, people couldn't figure out where is the intelligence in that. But Apple, what it did was, it said that current LLM models are not really thinking, they are doing pattern recognition, which is a fair point philosophically. But then people asked, then what do you do? And to that they had no answer. So a lot of paintbrush kind of stuff always keeps happening. Export of natural diamonds may see turnaround as China reignites demand. So people might remember, we discussed this a lot, that diamond industry, the natural diamond industry, is really screwed. It's gotten bad, right? Why? Because lab grown diamonds have become pretty equal as far as value is considered. So it's become very indecipherable, these two things, lab grown diamonds and real diamonds, due to which leading markets like US markets and Chinese markets are seeing a real slump in demand of lab grown diamonds. I'll give you a figure. India's diamond exports to China, FY22 6 billion, 6.5 million, FY25 3.2 billion. So in just 3 years it has halved, essentially. 3 years, half. That's huge, right? So think about all the diamond jobs in Gujarat. Where do those guys go? Because lab grown diamonds are kicking in. So Indian traders expect sales in China to pick up because they've given a new grading system for lab grown diamonds. So earlier, lab grown diamonds used to have it has introduced two categories for lab grown diamonds, premium and standard, moving away from the traditional 4 C's. So 4 C's is how natural diamonds are categorized, right? Cut, color, clarity and carat. So they're moving away from that. So since lab grown diamonds were getting clubbed in with the natural diamonds because of the measuring system of 4 C's, cut, clarity, color, and so on, carat. Now what they're looking at is changing it. It's calling premium and standard. So what they're hoping for is that once it's so well demarcated, both the things, lab grown diamonds and the fake diamonds, real diamonds, people will actually start buying more lab grown natural diamonds. So do you think this strategy would work? Just labeling lab grown diamonds, would it make people buy more natural diamonds if lab grown diamonds stop using the grading system, the same grading system as natural diamonds? What do you think? Would people stop buying lab grown diamonds just because it's graded in a different way, even though everything is the same? Yes, I do understand the framing part, the perception goes down, because if a lab grown diamond, which is much cheaper, gets graded the same way as a natural diamond, it is a problem. But do you think that will actually pick up the sales of natural diamonds? I don't know. Nobody knows. Speaking of stuff nobody knows, Z has approved a preferential warrant to promoters. Goenkas are the Subhash Chandra Goenka, if you remember, the patriarch of Z, has Z has been going through a real tough time, man. Z had a lot of debt. Puneet Goenka was barred from SEBI for dealing with stocks because of some money laundering operations, and it had been going through a very tough time. It was supposed to merge with Sony, but it couldn't because Goenkas wanted control. So Goenkas wanted to stay in control of Z despite everything. So they have very little shareholding in Z, some 3.9%. But now even with 3.9, they had a lot of board control, right? Due to which they essentially walked out. They spoiled the deal with Sony. A deal with Sony was very important for Z because both these people were struggling in India. Indian media, as I told you, the TV industry is struggling. So these people were struggling. So Sony and Z could have been a $10 billion merger. But that merger went nowhere because of Goenkas wanting to be in control. Sony's clear condition was that after the merger, we'll have a professional management and Goenkas will be out. So Goenka said no. So they used a very Indian trick कि इसके बारे में बात कर लेंगे, इसके बारे में बात कर लेंगे, इसके बारे में बात कर लेंगे, और वो clause उन्होंने sign ही नहीं किया. So they didn't sign that clause where promoters were supposed to exit as the management control steps in, right? They didn't do it, and Sony said we are not going ahead with the deal if this is not fine. So essentially Z and Sony's merger went off, and now Z is the board has approved promoter warrant issue. That means their shareholding from 4% will come up to 18.39%. 2.2 thousand crores issue aimed at raising promoter group stake. So Z has one of the most interesting corporate stories. If people have watched Succession, you will know what kind of play Z is. If you think about the family patriarch still wanted to keep a control of a media empire which is falling, which is going through very difficult times because of the evolving world landscape, everything. It's a very interesting story. Somebody should make like a biopic on it, but it'll never happen. India never has good biopics because we can't have anybody in grey. It'll have to be either good or bad. It's just very plastic. So speaking of things that are like unbelievable, is the Bhushan Par and Steel case. So viewers of Thinkers Frequency would know that it's another one of the major corporate stories. It is just almost unbelievable. So JSW acquired Bhushan Par, from the bankruptcy court and everything. It took money, it paid whatever, it included Bhushan Par, it invested in it, and so on and so forth. And just last month, Supreme Court said that this is illegal. Now JSW said that how can it be illegal, and if even after the deal, even after the bankruptcy deal getting processed and approved and everything, NCLT giving it a go ahead, and us buying the company, us spending money, us borrowing money from banks to pay for everybody, if that all goes down, what precedent will it set? Then that order was stayed. So Supreme Court actually, you know, it scrapped the deal, but now BPSL lenders seek SC review of its order scrapping the deal. Plea comes after SC ordered status quo on liquidation. So after SC, Supreme Court said now this deal is illegal. A lot of counter arguments happened, and then said it should be status quo. It should just let it be. You just let it be. Because just imagine if you've paid a price for a deal, if you've bought the company, if you've taken a loan to finance that, and you've paid off a lot of people. If you cancel that deal, what you're looking at is taking money back from people whom you've paid, like banks, the lenders who've lent the money. They got money from JSW, right? Jindal Steel. So JSW first needs to get that money back, return the company, but it had also made investments in that company. So how do you return that? So you need some compensation for the investment that you made in the company since you acquired it. Then you also took money from the banks to pay for the transaction. So you need to pay that money back. Everything gets screwed, right? So Supreme Court essentially didn't go ahead with that idea. And that's that. Bike taxi apps are halted in Bangalore. High Court ban kicks in. So I read that people have started using themselves as parcels. So these people have stopped using bike taxi on the app. It says send a parcel, and then people are the parcel. Indians have a way around everybody, right? Everything. So the Meesho is going public, and Meesho is gonna look at, essentially there'll be a tax outgo, but it's gonna relocate to India because it's gonna go public. Archit says hello bhaiya. Hi Archit, how you doing? So nice to see you, buddy. Good morning. Hope you're having a beautiful day and that it keeps getting better. So government databases were used for a lot of onboardings, Aadhaar based onboardings and so on and so forth. And some of that use case essentially was borderline illegal, and it was not really, lawful. People were using all sorts of, and people were not actually adhering to some sort of norms as far as data storing is considered. And that's gonna not go on for very long, because MeitY, Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, MeitY, it's basically cracking down of that unauthorized use, which is gonna make it very difficult for people to do KYC, people to do onboarding. It's bad news for startups, but there's probably gonna be some pushback. So while large funded startups stick to the rules, many small players gain unauthorized access to some of the government databases. So speaking of unauthorized things, US is pushing Vietnam on China links. So a lot of people thought Vietnam has a huge industry for manufacturing and Vietnam is killing it as a manufacturing, but that wasn't true, because what Vietnam was essentially was a repackaging unit for China. So China used to send its stuff to Vietnam and then just repackage it and send it to someplace else. So it was made in Vietnam, but only in name, not in spirit, right? So US is actually cutting down on those links as well. It doesn't want China to be escaping the tariffs. Speaking of US and China and their fight to levy tariffs and escape them, US had given a block of the latest semiconductor chips, right, to China. US doesn't want its latest Nvidia chips to go to China. You've read about this, I'm sure. If you haven't, now you know. So how Chinese people have started changing this is that these Chinese people come to Malaysia, where these shipments, the latest semiconductors exist. They come with a huge case of hard drives. They come to Malaysia, train their models, and then they go back with their hard drives. So interesting things happen. Not just Indians who can get away around things. Everybody can, right? OnePlus India auditor flags glitches, PF payment delays. Chinese firm says it's a process of addressing issues. Chinese companies are always in trouble in India, and now they're getting some heat to it. OnePlus is another example. With that, we come to the end of 23rd episode of Thinker's Frequency. A lot of heavy duty insights and analysis which don't lead to paralysis right before we start our day, right before we punch in. So it's 9-4. I hope you have a beautiful day at work. It was nice talking to you all. Thank you, Mr. Rajakumar, Mr. Perspective, Archit, Miss Yamini Kaushik, Mr. Ishan Kulkarni. Thank you so much. See you tomorrow. And I hope you like this. Send it to your friends and so on. Bye-bye.